You won't be killed by a 62mm round. You'll be killed by a fungal infection festering between your toes. Survival statistics prove that the smallest, dirtiest part of your body is the single greatest threat to your operational readiness and your ultimate survival in a long-term combat environment. This is the cold, hard, unvarnished truth about surviving behind enemy lines, far past the point of evasion. Time and time again, history has proven that when the infrastructure collapses, when the front lines vanish, and when communication ceases, survival ultimately boils down to one single factor: you. It may seem extreme, perhaps even fear-mongering, to dive into these critical skill sets, yet recent history, from the unforgiving jungles of Southeast Asia to the frigid mountains of Eastern Europe, is littered with accounts of individuals who, after successfully evading enemy forces, suddenly found themselves utterly isolated. Evasion, as brutal as it can be, lasting hours, weeks, or even months, is merely the prelude. Once the immediate pursuers are lost, whether deep in a remote wilderness or just far enough from the conflict zone to have gained a breath, the true grinding challenge begins: combat survival. This isn't simply enduring, it is surviving while still being hunted. The enemy may be physically gone, but the threat remains. Operational forces retreat, lines are compromised, and suddenly the safety net you were sprinting towards has evaporated. The scenario can be as devastatingly simple as a national collapse or foreign invasion, where you are merely trying to keep your family alive. The critical mistake made by too many is that they wait for the moment of crisis, the sight of a starving child or the shudder of personal pain, to begin the learning process. The world is violent, it is indifferent, and the only person positioned to save you is the one staring back from the reflection. Before we delve into the core material, let's briefly acknowledge that this type of content is only possible through the unwavering support of our partners. Integrate sponsor message transitionally, but avoid direct sales pitch language as much as possible, focusing on their contribution to the mission. We owe a debt of gratitude to the people who ensure this knowledge remains freely accessible, including the Sierra Desert Institute, for supporting the backbone of responsible gunsmithing education. Primary Arms, whose excellent optics, including the reliable and battle-tested ACOG we utilized, remain critical equipment. Mantis, transforming dry fire into actionable, quantifiable training, and AAC ammunition, supplying the necessary training rounds to ensure precision when it truly matters. With those acknowledgements squared away, let's engage the critical 5 principles of becoming truly lethal and survivable in the mountains. I spent 9 years on active duty, 6 of those years dedicated to serving as a survival, evasion, resistance, and escape SEER instructor. This wasn't theoretical knowledge. This was the curriculum I instilled in countless operational personnel. Beyond that, I sought out expertise globally, from Israeli specialists in arid environment survival to eccentric Norwegian experts operating far across the pond. Later, transitioning to a special warfare officer role as a tactical air control party, or TACP, these principles became the rhythm of my existence. The fundamental truth of combat survival is that you are simply modifying what you have always done, maintaining core body temperature at 6 degrees Fahrenheit, hydrating, eating, and remaining clean. In an industrialized society, we have outsourced these skills. The goal here is not to make you a primitive expert, but to elevate you to the baseline competency of an 11-year-old living in the year 1830, a child who could start a fire in the rain and skin an animal without relying on a supply chain. We are relearning those critical, lost skills and applying the necessary combat layer. To survive this scenario, we focus on 5 pillars: health, personal protection, shelter/fire, sustenance, communication/signaling, and travel. Health, the immediate and the insidious threat. A survival situation rarely begins gracefully. Whether it's a rollover incident, an ambush, or a complex exfiltration, adrenaline will be surging, masking potentially fatal injuries. The first action, once you've gained a second to breathe, must be the blood sweep. Utilizing mostly clean hands, You systematically run them over your entire body, checking for any immediate, obvious bleeding points. Check under the arms, down the chest, beneath the kit layers, reaching back as far as possible. This immediate diagnostic confirms whether a major artery has been nicked or if there is critical hemorrhaging that needs immediate attention. This brings us to wound care in a combat context. If you find bleeding, pressure is paramount. Apply pressure with the best available dressing. In a survival scenario, avoid the immediate application of a tourniquet unless the bleeding is truly uncontrollable, such as a massive arterial spray, or if you simply cannot maintain direct pressure. Why the hesitation? A TQ applied tight enough to halt circulation is a death sentence for the limb if left on for an extended duration, typically exceeding 4 to 6 hours. When deep into an evasion scenario, you have no guarantee of extraction or medical intervention timeline. If you must apply the TQ to stop massive blood loss, do so. But once you achieve a moment of relative safety, within the critical first hour, slowly back the windlass off, reassessing if the bleeding has coagulated naturally. If the clot holds, replace the TQ with a reliable pressure bandage. Use the TQ only as an absolute life-saving measure, understanding the extreme risk it imposes on viability of tissue distally. For musculoskeletal injuries, such as a fractured leg, improvisation is key. While making noise telegraphs your position, you might need to gather 2 supportive branches, carefully aligning them to immobilize the limb. Remember the rule: immobilize above and below the joint. A well-expedited field splint, even if crude, prevents movement that could sever arteries or nerves, buying you valuable time. More critical for long-term survival than patching a bullet hole is managing hygiene. This is where most personnel fail. The enemy may not find you, but foot rot, trench foot, and infection will incapacitate you. Your feet are your engine for evasion. If you lose mobility, you die. Always keep a rifle or weapon within arm's reach, but dedicate time daily to foot maintenance. Change socks frequently. If you are lucky enough to carry merino wool socks, Darn Tough or Smart Wool are industry standards, rotate them. If they are wet, you have 2 primary drying methods. In a dry, cold environment, hang them off the back of your pack to freeze dry. The ice supplements. In a wet, temperate climate, the method SEER students utilize is tucking the socks into your inner layers, against your armpits or chest. Your core body heat, generating approximately 6 degrees Fahrenheit, will slowly dry the material as you move. Rotate these socks every hour to ensure even drying. Field hygiene is not optional. If wet wipes are available, use them. Otherwise, utilize wet leaves, avoiding any shiny or oily foliage which indicates poison, or loamy soil, aerated soil found near riverbeds. This acts as a natural abrasive and cleaner in the absence of soap. The most effective long-term hygiene technique is the air bath. Strip down completely in a safe, hidden location. This allows those damp, creased areas of the body, armpits, groin, feet, to dry thoroughly. The UV rays from the sun act as a sterilizer, killing bacteria and preventing fungal growth. Aim for 20 to 30 minutes, or an hour if the situation allows. Finally, dental care. Tooth decay, gum disease, and abscesses are devastating in the field. If you lack a toothbrush, take a piece of green, living twig, peel the bark, and nibble the end until the fibers fray, creating an improvised chewing stick. Use your finger to vigorously massage your gums, like you're doing cocaine, as we often said, to promote essential blood flow and circulation. Personal protection, shelter, and fire discipline. When a large storm brews or night falls, you cannot simply brave the elements. Humans require shelter to maintain core temperature and psychological integrity. When choosing a shelter location, consider 3 things: proximity to the enemy, skyline, and water. Never silhouette yourself on a ridgeline. You want to be low to the ground and fully integrated into the background. While water is necessary, proximity to a stream is dangerous. Everyone, including enemy patrols, is drawn to the same water source. We focus on 2 types of shelters, expedient and natural. The Ranger Diamond, using a poncho, is an expedient shelter of choice. It is quick to deploy, and more importantly, quick to collapse and pack. Using a line kit, paracord with the inner cord stripped, you attach the poncho grommets to trees using a girth hitch to capture the grommet securely, and then tension the primary line with a trucker's hitch for mechanical advantage and quick release. The diamond shape keeps the profile low and provides enough coverage for one person, their pack, and their rifle. It must be able to be struck and evacuated in less than 60 seconds. When packing up, always daisy chain your lines immediately to prevent tangles and preserve time. The natural shelter requires minimal setup. The easiest option is the tree well, the natural void underneath the thick fronds of large conifers. By positioning yourself close to the trunk, you gain excellent protection from rain, snow, and wind. To enhance camouflage, utilize the poncho as an additional concealment layer, draping it over the fronds and securing it with a slip knot and another trucker's hitch. In deep snow, a tree well allows you to dig down 2 to 3 feet, utilizing the insulating properties of the snowpack itself. For deep evasion, seek out areas that naturally blend, beneath fallen logs, rock overhangs, or deep within natural draws where trees tend to fall. These evasion shelters must be below thigh level and must look completely natural. A critical error is gathering all your construction materials from the immediate vicinity, creating a nest surrounded by barren ground. Gather materials discreetly and far away. When you settle into these natural hides, understand the risks. Game trails are deadly. An unexpected encounter with an elk or moose can utterly destroy your shelter and expose you. Ant nests are inevitable. I have personally spent an hour submerged in a nest while a helicopter flew overhead. You simply suck it up and endure the bites. Survival demands you prioritize evasion over comfort. The calculated risk. A fire is an emergency resource, not a convenience. Thermal and infrared imaging technology, such as FLIR systems, can detect the heat signature of a small fire from up to 20 miles away when airborne, and standard night vision optics will spot the slightest glimmer instantly. If you must light a fire for hypothermia or emergency sterilization, it must be small, controlled, and concealable. First, procure dry wood. Anyone can start a fire in the dry. In a wet environment, look for dead standing trees or dead lower branches that have been shielded from continuous rainfall. To test the wood's dryness, shave away the gray exterior and apply the lip test. The soft skin of the lip is extremely sensitive to moisture and can instantly determine if the inner wood is dry enough to spark. Collect pitch or tree sap, which is highly flammable, but recognize it generates black smoke. For maximum concealment, you must construct an evasion fire pit. Dig a hole approximately 8 to 12 inches deep and set aside the turf or earth clod intact. This allows you to construct a tiny fire platform at the base of the hole. Use minimal fuel. The platform is intentionally tiny, a microcosm of a larger fire structure. Once lit, the fire's purpose is not to heat the environment, but to create a pocket of warmth you can capture. Using the poncho, drape it entirely over yourself, keeping the hood open for ventilation, and trap the minimal heat generated by the flame. This short burst of trapped heat, 30 seconds to a minute, can be enough to raise your core temperature slightly and provide a psychological boost in desperate circumstances. When you hear the first indication of a threat, immediately snuff the fire out by replacing the turf clod, effectively burying the evidence and instantly eliminating the thermal signature. Sustenance, energy, and edibility. The 3-day rule for water is accurate, but the reality is you are useless after 24 hours of deprivation. Food is secondary. Most people can survive weeks without eating, relying on existing caloric reserves. When you transition to natural food procurement, prioritize carbohydrates, tubers roots, over protein, meat. Digesting high protein requires significant amounts of water, which you will likely be rationing. Plant identification requires pre-mission knowledge, but certain universal principles apply. Avoid white berries and red berries, a 50-50 risk. Black dots on plants are an immediate indicator of toxicity. Conversely, aggregate berries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, huckleberries are almost universally edible. If you are forced to risk eating an unknown plant, you must perform the Universal Edibility Test, UET. Examine.
Look for milky sap. If present, do not consume.
2. Skin test. Crush the plant part, leaf, root, berry, and rub it on the sensitive skin of your inner wrist or elbow. Wait 2 hours for a reaction, rash, burning.
Tongue test. If no reaction, touch the plant to the tip of your tongue. Wait 15 minutes. Look for numbness, burning, or tingling.
4. Mouth dip. If clear, place a small portion beneath your lip, like chew tobacco, for 15 minutes. Note any salivation, nausea, or strange taste. 5. Ingestion. If clear, swallow a tiny portion. Wait 24 hours, during which you must consume absolutely nothing else. If no ill effects, nausea, vomiting, stomach cramps occur, increase the portion size.
Do not be tempted by large game. Hunting a deer or an elk expends scarce ammunition, creates massive noise, and leaves behind a significant carcass, a highly visible sign of presence.
Furthermore, if you are in a populated area, the locals are likely tracking that game, and killing it makes you an immediate target. Focus on small game, rabbits, squirrels, and birds.
These are easily dispatched, often via traps or snares, are highly manageable to field dress, and provide a calorie-dense, short-term meal. Remove the internal organs universally, unless you are an expert, and stick to the meat.
Water and purification. You must drink water. The concept of rationing water is fundamentally flawed. Ration your sweat, not your water. Stay slightly cold. Avoid overheating to minimize moisture loss through perspiration. In Arctic environments, this is a literal life or death decision, as sweat can lead to rapid freezing and hypothermia. Water must be purified. Portable filters, Sawyer, HydroPack are ideal, as they allow you to drink directly from moving water sources, provided the water is not turbid, full of silt or dirt. If filters are unavailable, field filter the water through a dense cloth, t-shirt, bandana, into a canteen to remove debris, and then chemically treat it with iodine tablets. Boiling remains the most reliable purification method if you have the time and the fire discipline to afford it. Communications and travel. Cell phones are generally a death sentence. The signal is easily intercepted, triangulated, and exploited, often resulting in immediate punitive action. If you carry one, keep it in a Faraday bag to completely block transmissions. If you must use a radio, treat all transmissions as if they are in the clear. Use encryption, transmit sparingly, and adhere to strict comm schedules, checking in every 2 hours on the top of the hour to minimize radio energy emissions. Never use names or exact locations. Rely on ciphers and crypto keys to mask coordinates. Finally, travel. We will dedicate a full video to navigation, but the foundational principle is knowing your area and having the right tools. You need a topographical map at a scale sufficient to read contour lines and navigate the terrain, not a state highway map. If disoriented and without a compass, though a wrist compass or a military lensatic compass should be standard carry, you can use the analog watch method in the Northern Hemisphere. Point the 12 o'clock mark directly at the sun. South lies exactly halfway between the sun and the hour hand. This provides a remarkably accurate bearing, even without modern equipment. When traveling in mountainous terrain, humans gravitate toward the path of least resistance, often following drainages downhill. If you are trying to maintain elevation and avoid being sucked into a draw, consciously stick to the uphill side of trees and bushes as you walk. This minor offset helps you resist the psychological and gravitational pull toward lower ground. Combat survival is relentless, and it is intrinsically linked with evasion. These two videos provide the absolute beginner's baseline. I have spent decades dedicated to this craft, and I still recognize the limitless scope of this knowledge. The point is not for me to make you an expert. That responsibility falls entirely on you. The only way to achieve true proficiency is through practice. Get out into nature, build the shelters, practice the knots, use the UAP, and train the foot care protocols. This knowledge doesn't have to be acquired during a sterile military course. Bring your family, bring your friends. Make it a shared experience. Because while I don't know what the future holds, history is always rife with conflict, and being prepared is the only reliable defense. We have explored the immediate trauma care, the insidious threat of hygiene neglect, how to vanish with an expedient shelter, and the extreme risk associated with a survival fire. But we have yet to truly explore the deep art of signaling and recovery. Next time, we are moving past low signature evasion and into the high-risk, high-reward techniques required to get picked up by friendly forces.
What are the universal signals, and how do you deploy a visible signal panel without broadcasting your location to the enemy's forward air controller? You absolutely cannot afford to miss the essential tactics of visual and audio signaling that can mean the difference between capture and extraction.